Hi everyone, welcome back to the Aviation Voice podcast. Today we are diving into another fascinating story from our aviation history. Joining me, a very special guest, Captain 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗪𝗓 is a former chief pilot of 𝗙𝗢𝗡𝗙𝗪𝗓, Boeing 747 captain and instructor at Singapore Airlines, and a highly respected Boeing company flight simulator instructor. And he is an award winning author and in retirement runs a humanitarian organization. Captain Elmo, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Absolutely welcome.
In this episode, we will explore the iconic flight of the Double Sunrise, a remarkable story from aviation history. Captain, tell us about the flight of the Double Sunrise.
Okay, it's actually a fascinating story. That is the most important thing. And more than that, it has an aviation record. I don't think anybody can beat that record. The longest passenger flight that has been flown in this world, right? Now, it's a long story. You'll have to give me the time to explain that.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
so
yes.
let's try to make it simple, because
Simple,
there are a
yeah.
lot of people who are aviators who are listening to this. They would understand most of it, but there are so many people who are watching this who may not have that aviation background. So we got to talk in simple terms so that everybody understands the importance and the value of this flight.
Yes.
And that is what it is.
Yes.
So to begin with, I had to start, how did I come across this? I'll start there. Now, years ago, actually about 40 years ago, I was flying for 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗪𝗓 that time. Somebody has come to my house and given a little parcel.
Aye.
Little parcel he has given and had told the people in my home that, can you kindly give this to Captain? Then they had said, no, he's gone on a flight. Give it to him. I brought it for him because he has done some favor for me. This is to equalize my gratitude. I'm bringing this for him. And tell him that this particular thing that is in this box was in my home. It was there for a long time. And I'm from Gaul, the city of Gaul. So I came to give it to him. That's the beginning of the story. So a couple of days later, I came home and those people forgot to tell me that somebody came and gave a gift also. And one day, one of the guys said, sir, there's a gift for you from somebody from Gaul. Now, Gaul is a very famous city in Sri Lanka. So
At that time, especially.
Yes. So I opened it. Now, this is 40 years ago, right? I opened it and I found this.
I think I've heard this story, Captain. This is related to the main story, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm coming from there. And this is made in 1929. This one. Beautiful one. Have a
Nearly
look at
100
it.
years.
Yeah.
Captain, what's this?
You can put the wind. We can put the wind there and put the track, and you get the drift and the speed. With the 2 air speed, you can convert it to a ground speed, and you can fly an aeroplane on a route with this computer. Now, Aristo makes these computers also, but this is the one that I got as a gift 40 years ago.
Right.
Okay, right.
Suddenly one person came and...
So I was wondering, it's a beautiful thing. I don't know. It must be very valuable. But I was fascinated to know, he said it was in his house. And he's from Gaul. Now, the airport is in Ratmalana or in Katunayaka. So I was wondering, how did this computer end up in a house there? Maybe there was a pilot in the family. No, there was nothing like that. I can't remember anything from Gaul. Anyway, when I started digging into it, I realized there was a flight that came from Sydney to Perth.
Yes.
And Perth to Koggala. And from Koggala, they went on to Karachi. And the flight went on to England. This was called the Kangaroo Route. That is what it is all
This
about.
route was known as the Kangaroo Route.
Kangaroo
Yeah.
Route, right. So the Kangaroo Route originally was from Sydney to Perth, Perth to Singapore. Singapore, sometimes they landed in Calcutta, but mostly they went direct to Karachi.
Karachi.
Now, this was flown by Qantas pilots. So, Qantas takes a total credit for the safety of this flight
Yes.
and the planning and everything. From Karachi to London, the flight was continued like this code sharing business by BOAC, British Overseas Airways Corporation. So, this is the Kangaroo Route. But this was 1940s.
40s. Yeah.
There was a war going on, and Japan by this time had conquered most of the Asian countries, and they were occupying Singapore. So what it meant was that flight from Perth to Singapore could not come to Singapore. So they had to
Because
cancel
of the war. Yeah.
because of the war, and the Japanese were occupying. They had to lose that communication between Sydney and London, all because the aeroplane could not go from Perth and stop for a pit stop, like in more car races in Singapore and go, they couldn't go there. That was a big problem. Of course, they were not going to give up. They looked at alternate ways of operating this. Then they came up with the idea that they could go from Perth to Sri Lanka, southern tip of Sri Lanka.
Different route.
Different route, entirely different route, much more southern. And then from there they can go to Karachi, avoiding the Japanese occupied skies. The plane would be safe. So they calculated. Now, you are asking me to come for this, and I'm not having any notes or anything to bring. I'm telling you what's in my mind. This particular aeroplane, a Catalina, right?
Yeah, Catalina,
you have to put the pictures on, had a range of about 3,600 miles, right? And it carried a lot of fuel. I can't remember how much of fuel it carried, but the range was that. And the aeroplane weighed about 16,000 plus kilograms.
Captain, why was Koggala selected for these
Yes,
flights?
so let's come to that. Thank you for, I was coming to that. So they wanted to come to Sri Lanka and land in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. Now, Sri Lanka had an airport at that time in Ratmalana.
Ratmalana. Our main airport was the
Ratmalana at that time. Catalina was also coming up, right? But they wanted to land somewhere as close as possible to the southern coast so that the journey will be shorter. And this was an amphibian airplane. It could land on a waterway or on a ground. So they looked at Galle area and found that Koggala Lake would be the ideal place for this Catalina to come from Perth. They'll take off from Swan River and come to Koggala and land. And then from there they will go to Karachi. So what happened was they decided this can be done because, in simple arithmetic, the plane could go 3,600 nautical miles. This was 3,100. So they had 500 in excess. The aeroplane can do that. How long it takes, we'll go over it later on.
Captain, can you tell us about Catalina aircraft?
Yeah, Catalina aeroplane was used mainly for long range flights and then also for observation flights, right? Like they flew to look at whatever reconnaissance, going around and watching what is on the sea and all that kind of flying. The Catalina was ideal, right? So they were
at that time for the mail transportation.
So the mail was also there. So that is why this Catalina was used. And when you say flight, that particular Kangaroo flight had only 3 passengers.
Yes.
Right? It was filled with mail. Mainly mail. But there was a link. That was the whole thing. So the Catalina was selected. They wanted to come from Swan River in Perth down to Koggala and then go to Karachi. That part is there. Only thing is, they had prepared Koggala. No, Koggala was just a lake. There was no air base or anything. So it was, of course, rule Britannia time. So we were a colony at that time.
Yes.
They decided that everybody within a radius of 5 miles from the lake had to leave Koggala because there were fishermen and so many little cultivators and all that. So they all had to leave within 24 hours.
24 hours.
Now, I don't know whether they were paid something or what, all that is beyond me. I don't know. But I know that they were only given 24 hours. Now, you might ask, where did you learn that? I learned that because I took this computer and I went to Gaul looking for the only man alive who had seen it all, a lovely gentleman called Justin 𝗙𝗪𝗟𝗪𝗪. And Justin 𝗙𝗪𝗪𝗪's father was the local headman, right, of the Koggala area. So he was allowed to stay. So there was an island called Madinduva, which is now called Kuruluduva or Bird Island. They lived there. Justin's family and his father was the headman. So he was allowed to stay, but everybody within that radius was
Within 24 hours.
within 24 hours asked to go away. I'm sure they would have been compensated in some ways or whatever.
Yes.
That I don't think they would have just told them no, pack and go.
Because of the security and all.
Yes, because you see, if the Catalina comes to land in the lake and there's a fisherman in the middle of it,
Yes.
then it is a problem, right?
Yes,
So all this considering, that was what happened. So anyway, the lake was ready. They had everything sorted out. And also, don't forget, Koggala Lake is about 11 miles from the beautiful town of Gaul.
Gaul.
So the crew that came along could go and stay in Gaul. There was a hotel there. Now, I'm trying to, New Oriental Hotel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
What was the name of that hotel that was there? So let's take the flight now from Perth to Koggala. Average was 28 hours. Now that is a very long one. The longest flights I have flown has never exceeded more than 17 hours.
17.
On a 747, that was with 2 captains and 2 co-pilots and a lovely bunk bed to rest, right? And with all the computers and everything, you put a switch and the aeroplane flies. That was only 18 hours. And they were pressurized aeroplanes flying at 37,000 feet. This Catalina was not pressurized. So the difference is it's so noisy. And 28 hours, they had to hear the noise. It's a cramped up thing flying at about 9,000 feet. So that was very difficult. And the longest flight was 32 hours and 8 minutes. Now that is the world record. So Sri Lanka holds the world record for the longest commercial flight in the world, which was operated by Qantas Imperial Airways on a Catalina. And the first flight was flown by a wonderful gentleman whose name should be written in gold on this, right? Captain Russell Taps.
Captain.
He was the captain of the aeroplane, right? Now, all this is history. It is all written. And I think Qantas should be very proud of this whole operation. Then, navigation. Now, if you take the lines that you have drawn on the back of this, from Perth, you draw a straight line to Koggala, it's all over water. Nothing else. So there is no navigational aids or nothing. They went by the stars.
Without the radar and all.
Nothing.
No
There is nothing, right? They went by the stars. They were doing astronavigation, right? But astronavigation is only for the night. No?
Night.
So daytime, they had to take the sextant and shoot their positions from the sun. But all that is fine. But when you're flying at 9,000 feet over, between you and the stars, there's a lot of clouds. So sometimes you don't have it. But they were such great pilots. I mean, it's unbelievable that man can sit and fly that long. And with these basic instruments and sextants, I mean, it is what Columbus and Vasco da Gama used for navigation. They were using at this time. But they did it. So it was a great feat of navigation to fly from Perth to Koggala. But they had one advantage. This is the important thing. Supposing they lost an engine, they got two engines, so if you lose that, you can't continue. They can land anywhere because they over the water now. So this aeroplane can land anywhere. So that safety part was there for them, right? So that is how they came. And this operation started on the 1943, 30th of June, right? And it went on till 1945, July. So many times this flight went up and down. And this is the most important thing. There wasn't a single incident or accident. Now you can imagine what that is to fly like this, not have an incident, no accident. Those pilots would have been brilliant. That's to begin with. And Qantas would have planned it so well that every contingency, they would have looked at everything and brought this flight like this.
Captain, other than Koggala, was there an alternative airport in Sri Lanka?
That time,
At that time,
Ratmalana. Ratmalana was there.
Yeah.
But they didn't need Ratmalana. They could go to 𝗙𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗪𝗪 and land on the sea.
Yes.
I mean, that was the greatest advantage they had. They could land anywhere. That was no problem. So the thing is, they were using the stars now. There were 5 aeroplanes that was doing the route. So they named it after the stars. So one was called Altair, then Antares, then Spica, Raigal, and Vega. Those are the 5 aeroplanes that flew up and down, right? Now, when the war was over, they called it sculling. You know, they sink the aeroplanes in the sea. It's a sad thing. But I still think there's one remaining somewhere, I can't remember, but there are 1 or 2 still remaining in museums, so people can go and see what a Catalina is like. So this is the story. So all this was told to me by this Justin Javardhan, who's no relation to me, whose father was the headman. And not only that, when I went to see him, my wife went along and we hired a simple boat and he took us to where the runway was.
Water runway.
Water runway. I can go tomorrow and show anybody where the windsock was, and it's a very straight, open waterway till he comes to that bird island. So Justin was in the bird island watching these planes take off, crawl on the water, and just barely going over the trees because it's a long way to run to lift it up. Because it would have been extremely heavy carrying all the fuel possible. So even today, I hope somebody from the tourist department in Sri Lanka would listen to this and make it known that this is where the flight ended. And we don't have anything to show for that. We can't even go to the lake because it's an Air Force operating airport now. So you just can't go there. You can't just go and
so
take
we have to take the approvals
and all that, but they can be done. I mean, that is understandable because they got to have their security. But the tourism part of it is, in fact, very strange. You're asking me to come here. Next February, 200 Australian tourists are coming to Sri Lanka. Some important travel organization had contacted me asking me whether I'll be free to give them a talk because these people are following the Kangaroo Route.
Right.
So all that is highly touristic things if somebody wants to use it. So the story is that this is the longest flight. So you understand that. Then again, back to Justin. He's now, he died some years ago. But what he showed me is right in my head. And some captains who came to visit me in Sri Lanka, I took them. One was from Australia, a gentleman, captain called 𝗙𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗪𝗪. Another one was from Kenya, called Amir Ahmed. They went and they saw what this was all about. And it's a great thing for people to go and see.
Yes.
So this is the story of the double sunrise. If you have any questions, I'll answer you.
Yes, Captain, we should mention about these without the radar technology and all, what challenges did they face at that time and all. So we have to mention that as well now, Captain.
Yeah, it is like this. The Catalina did not have radar. nothing,
Yeah.
right? And also, they were flying the same monsoons that are here today. You know, the southwest monsoon comes, it's all clouded.
Cloudy.
And then they are flying, and they had to keep radio silence because there were Japanese fighters operating from Singapore, and they didn't want to talk on the radio because then they'll be recognized. So they had to keep radio silence and fly. Then, when you had big clouds, you're flying at 9,000 feet, you have to divert. Sometimes you have to divert about 50 miles to get out of that cloud
Yeah.
and come round. And then going 50 miles is not the problem. But once you finish that, you got to get back on track.
Right. Yeah.
No, there's nothing to go by other than a navigational star shot taken by your from your sextant.
Sextant.
Because there's nothing on the ground to look at,
Yes.
and then make your navigational corrections. Only advantage that they had was when they were flying, as long as they did not go left of the track, because if they went left of the track, they would have missed the edge of Sri Lanka, then there was nothing. They would have just gone. As long as he go more to the right, then they'll hit Sri Lanka.
It's really
The moment
somewhere,
they see
yeah.
the coast of Sri Lanka, they can go coast crawling to Koggala. I mean, they would have, I wasn't there, I don't know how they did it, but I'm only thinking like a pilot. They had their ways of making it a safe flight. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come. Captain Taps would have known, I have this option, this option, this option. Failing everything, I can land this aeroplane in the water and then use the radio or whatever you have to do to tell them where I am. But leaving all that aside, I must categorically state, where flying is concerned, that flight was flown by people who really knew how to fly. That I have to say. Those Qantas pilots were great pilots, whoever they were. Obviously, they are all not living now, but their families must be living. And Australia itself as a country should be proud of this, and Qantas more than anything else should take the total credit for this kind of flying that they did for 2 years without a single incident.
The safety and the,
Yes.
it's unbelievable, no, Captain? It's,
No,
honestly,
it is. For me, the most beautiful thing was I went to the water runway in a
Yes.
boat and I saw, my God, this man took off from here.
Yes.
And a lovely feeling, and people should do that. That is what I think.
I think you are the only person who went there and have the idea and all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether anybody else went, but
Yes.
I've been always fascinated with this story. That's why I researched it,
Yes.
and I wrote about it, and I've given interviews about it, because I want people to know that Sri Lanka is part of this magnificent record, aviation record, that I don't think you can break that record. Because how can you fly 32 hours in an aeroplane and carry passengers? No, I don't think that will happen, because planes are so fast now. But the truth is, they did it.
Because of the time and all, they
Yes.
named this as the flight of the double sunrise.
That is because the passenger, when he flew 28 hours, he saw 2 sunrises.
Two sunrises.
That is why it was called the flight of the double sunrise. And in Swan Lake, which I have seen with my own eyes, I have gone there. On the show, there's a big plaque telling the whole story. Beautiful plaque. I'll send you a picture of that so that you can use it when you're
Yes, Captain.
showing this video.
Oh, Captain, do we have any plaque or something in Koggala?
I don't think so. I don't know. I have gone there a few times. Some of my friends went, because they can't go near the lake also,
Lake,
no, because
yes.
it's part of the Air Force.
Air Force.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That brings us to the end of this episode, the flight of the double sunrise, a remarkable piece of aviation history. Captain, thank you for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights with us. Thank you very much, Captain.
You're most welcome. I'm glad that you gave me this opportunity so that I can tell this story
Yes,
to a lot
Captain.
of people.
Somehow we must tell these stories to our next generations as well.
Yes,
That's
definitely,
why I have
yes.
decided to. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe Aviation Voice YouTube channel for more valuable videos like this. Thank you very much. See you in our next episode.